Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, PumaPodcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
We were trying to correct, but the fact checking was just being heard in our own echo chambers because there's a separate reality already. It's like we could not penetrate into the cells that have been created because of this information.
former Vice President Leni Robredo reflects on disinformation again, this time at a panel hosted by former US President Barack Obama's foundation. Last week, the Obama Foundation held its first ever Democracy Forum in New York.
One of our goals is to create a community and shared platform for these emerging leaders so they can learn from each other and share best practices and form strategic partnerships across issues and across borders.
That's former US President Barack Obama, of course. The entire event was predicated on a phenomenon we've seen in recent years: the assault on democratic ideals across the globe.
We see a manifestation of it in the unjustified and brutal war in Ukraine. We see it in the backsliding that's taking place in what were well-established democracies. We see it in the escalating polarization and disinformation that's so evident in recent elections, whether it's in Brazil, the Philippines, Italy, Sweden, right here in the United States.
It's no surprise then that his foundation invited former Vice President Leni Robredo to share her insights.
We have supporters, and our supporters were also crying, fight fire with fire. So some of them were also trying to fight all the disinformation with trying to correct everything on social media. But we felt like it just added to the polarization. As was said earlier, it's the populist playbook that you agitate one party, enrage the other, and when everything is so polarized, then there's no common baseline of fact anymore. There's no chance for people to discuss and to do a fair amount of discourse.
When we think of disinformation, especially here in the Philippines, trolls on social media are often top of mind. But another panelist, Anil Dash, CEO of the software company Glitch, reminds us that our problems with disinformation predate not just social media, but the internet itself.
This didn't start with the social networks we use today. This didn't start with the internet, right? This is a pattern and a playbook that predates that. And I think that's one of the things that's really important to understand because within the technology world, for obvious reasons, people want to think that everything is determined by the software we write and the code we write and the technology we write. And it has an impact, but in many cases it's carrying forward patterns, behaviors, or systems that existed before that.
When Anil and Lenny reference playbooks, here's what they mean.
There is a playbook of how you sort of sow mistrust. Technology absolutely amplifies it, but that structure of, first of all, can we raise an illegitimate question, an intellectually dishonest question, and start with this sort of sense of because we want to destabilize the entire conversation. That's one of the parts of the playbook.
The other half of this strategy probably sounds eerily familiar.
There's also the making it a stressful conversation, right? As soon as you amplify the emotional tension of it, the majority of people, if that's not the primary thing they care about, are just going to check out. They say, I don't want to get involved. That sounds like there's a big fight there. And what that has the effect of is treating both sides of a debate as equal because you're like, I don't want to engage.
We'll pause here, but when we return, we talk about how other countries are fighting back. One of the most effective strategies deployed by Leni Robredo's campaign to combat disinformation online was to take the fight elsewhere. To have conversations removed from the intellectually dishonest and exhausting polarization online.
But I think we made a breakthrough when we brought the campaign out of social media already. We called it tao sa tao, puso sa puso. It means person to person, heart to heart. So it was encouraging our supporters to go out of social media, try to talk to as many people who do not share your values, who do not share your beliefs, and try to discuss in a very calm manner. And we have made a lot of breakthroughs.
And while the former VP admits that their house to house efforts started too late, she and her team continue to believe in the power of trying to persuade others by conversing with them face to face.
And our campaign now is to continue those conversations. Start with your traditional networks like families, work, school, and then go out of the communities. During the campaign, we were able to form a large number of volunteers because of that. A lot of people felt very much grounded because of the conversations with people who were from a different perspective, who believed in other things different from what their beliefs are.
Obama pointed out how social media has fostered anger and divisiveness.
We're in the midst of an information revolution. Much of it, which is built on commercial platforms that find controversy and conflict more profitable than tolerance and truth.
2016 saw the election of President Donald Trump in the US and President Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines. Both of their wins were aided in part by staggering disinformation campaigns on Facebook and other social networks. In the years since, lawmakers across the world have struggled to hold social media networks accountable, but parts of the world are making headways.
There are two legislations which have really recently been passed in the EU. One is the Digital Services Act and the Digital Market Act, which actually wants to pursue the path of making the social media networks more accountable, more transparent. There are a lot of lobbyists now asking all the other congresses all over the world to pass similar legislations or more improved ones.
It's unclear if we'll see similar measures passed here. But unlike in 2016, Leni says the public now has the tools needed to better understand and resist the disinformation ecosystem in the Philippines.
There are two groundbreaking researches about disinformation in the Philippines. It was headed by a group of Filipino sociologists and academics. The head is Jonathan Ong, who's a Shorenstein Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. And those two researches are groundbreaking in the sense that, number one, it unmasked the entire disinformation operations in the Philippines. And number two, the latest one is really trying to frame everything as not just disinformation, but a broader influence operations already. That there's a set of recommendations that would guide us as we go along. So it's not like 6 years ago when we were groping in the dark on what to do. Right now, we have learned from our lessons and we're moving forward.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Mark Casilian. If you want to hear more about the research by Jonathan Ong that VP Leni Robredo was talking about, check out this Teka Teka episode titled Unmasking Influence Operations in the Philippines. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.